Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. This is the show where we build the community one conversation at a time, brick by brick. Today, we have a great show, and I have my good friend, Amie Stewart. Amie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You nervous?
Yes.
I love the fact that we get to sit here and talk because I'm starting the podcast back up. And I think it was almost a year ago, maybe was it more, where we were running for our seats. And I said, when I start the podcast back up, you're going to be my first guest. And you are.
You did say that.
So I'm glad we're here.
Me too.
So for those of you that don't know, Amie Stewart is my colleague on the Bellflower Unified School District Board. She is an amazing school board member. She is engaged in the community. We have a lot of shared values when it comes to communication, transparency. And I think one thing that really drew people to you was the fact that you are a real person, that you care a lot about education and having very honest and authentic interactions with the community. And I think that it's a great thing to have on the board, and it really helps me as one, knowing that there's somebody like-minded in that way on the board. So as we start, why don't you say a little bit about yourself and how you became a school board member? Did you ever think you were going to be a school board member?
Never.
What drove you to run?
Honestly, I think my mom's death was a big part of it. My mom was very into education. That was really important to her. So I've been raised in a family full of teachers, full of union workers. Education was very important to myself. And so, just with the pandemic, with everything going on, looking and seeing what's going on in our schools, I just felt like I could make a difference or I could help. I was born and raised in Bellflower, so I know the city. My mom, my daughter, and myself, I've said this a lot, have all graduated from Bellflower High School. So I felt like it was my home, it was my heart, and I just felt like, we see a lot of things in politics right now, and some of it's not so great, and you can't just talk the talk. You have to actually get in there and do it. And so I decided to try to get in there and do it and try to make a difference for my community.
And what's been your experience so far?
I love it. It's funny because I just saw some of my teammates last weekend and they were like, you've really found you, like this is you. The education piece just drives me, helping others. And so I think the friends that I've made, the people that I've met along the way, everything about it, I'm just really enjoying it so much. The events, seeing the kids, just trying to make a difference. I love every aspect of it.
What would 18-year-old Amie, would 18-year-old Amie believe one day you're going to be the board member of the school? Because you went to Bellflower High.
I did.
What would
Never.
No.
My goal in life, I love sports. I loved playing. I was an athlete and all I wanted to do was play. I just wanted to coach. That was my focus. And then I started teaching and I just fell in love with it. And, I've been doing it 25 years now. So I kind of changed the trajectory of my path, having a kid, a child that makes a difference. And so, I got a good job. It had great benefits. I went with it and then I fell in love with it. And so I love doing what I do.
I think having educators on a school board is really important. What do you think it is about that that makes, obviously education and school board, they go hand in hand. But do you feel that you really bring that perspective to the board, having been an educator yourself?
I say yes. I think all of my different experiences have helped me, especially being a part of the union. I mean, being an educator, you only see it from one side. You see yourself, you see what you do, your administrators, the people you work with directly. Being in the union helped me talk to other members, get to know other sides of the story. I got to sit in with superintendents. I got to kind of, get more of an idea of how a district is ran. And so I think bringing that in has helped me, but I'm still learning so much and there's still so many things that are different than what I expected.
You have an amazing work ethic on the board. You ask a lot of really great questions, but not only that, but you really dig in to the whys of the district does things. And you're also really big on data But the overarching thing is the work ethic that goes into it. How much of that would you attribute to your experiences as an athlete?
Obviously, being a team member and working with the board, I think that's a big thing. I think the research is huge. Like, there's so many things that we're given to read in a 2 week span before our meetings. And it's not just reading the board books or reading all of those materials. It's taking that information and then doing your own research and trying to put your own truth and your own answers and your own facts together to make the best decisions that you can. So I think just, you know, being strategic about how you research and how you do things and how you look at things is really important on top of just, the given things that they have us doing.
You mentioned that your mom and your mom's passing was a big reason why you jumped in.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Just, my mom had a lot of different unique experiences as well. She started off, my father worked and he made a good living. So she started off working part-time. She was a CSEA employee. She worked from 8 to 12 so that she could get off and she could go to my events and my games. And after I went to college, she really wanted to be a teacher. So once I went to school, she went to Cal State Dominguez and she got her teaching credentials. And then she became a teacher. She only taught for about 15 years before she retired. But just seeing her experiences and, going from CSCA to her own teacher, to retiring, I think just watching her journey was really, it was just really good for me and it was really good to see.
I think it's always really important to have, it's great when it can be your parents that inspire you to do things in life. But I also think it that has a ripple effect, right? Because now you get to be an inspiration for other people to do things. I mean, on top of your own daughter,
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like being school board gives you that opportunity to really influence students, or do you feel like there's a disconnect?
I do. I feel like it gives us the opportunity because of the decisions that we make. And sometimes I think the biggest aha for me is how long things take. When I was on the outside, I was like, oh my gosh, why? This takes so long. Why can't we get it moving? And now that you're on the inside, you see that there's a process. You have to learn about the things that you're going to vote on. You have to, research. There's just so much more. You have to wait a few meetings before you can approve things. So I just think I'm understanding why it takes so long. And, looking at the budgets and how much they are and all the different pieces and aspects of it, I'm starting to get a gauge on why why it's a long process.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I think for people on the outside, just for same thing with me and you before we got elected, that could be a very frustrating part of the whole thing. I think, you and I have done a really good job of coming into it knowing that, there's things that we want to see change and there's things that we would want to focus on and prioritize, but coming at it from a place of humility of I want to learn how it's done to do it correctly and not just, wrecking ball it up. And I know sometimes, again, from the outside, that can be frustrating for people that want change right now all the time. But I think that's one of the really exciting things of knowing what's going on with the district and the positive direction that we're going, and
Right.
just knowing that it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're really going to a special place. What's one of the things that was more difficult being on the board that you didn't foresee, other than things taking a long time, that you didn't count on, but you're okay, it's a struggle.
I think just the different personalities that you have on the board.
Okay.
You believe that
me.
you're going to all have one common goal. Even just in general, you think it's education, it's kids. We're all going to have the same views on it, but you don't.
Right.
And so I think that part is just, you just have to learn more about that and try to understand the place that people are coming from and with their experiences. Everyone has such different experiences in life. And so trying to piece that together of why people do the things they do, I think is interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's same thing for me. I think for me, it's always, as long as people have the right intention and we have the same goal, we can disagree all the way along the road, because those disagreements, they actually help the process, if done properly.
Right.
But I do think that like that can be that I think that's a very necessary part of the democratic process. If you have 5 people that all think the same thing, there's really no point of having an entire board to make decisions. You want disagreement, you want dialogue, you want debate, you want to come up with the best solution possible, especially or even when it's not your solution. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like sometimes people want their solution to win rather than the best solution for the collective. And I feel like that's where communication can break down, right? But yeah, it's a people business. I mean, that's literally politics is like it's a communication people thing. It's sociology. It's difficult, especially when you have like somebody who acts like a little brother on the. I love it. I think
Me
that dynamics across the board, no pun intended. I think that there's a lot of good in it, and again, I feel like the entire district is going to be going in a very positive direction.
I do think we all have the same wants. It's just a matter of how you get there.
Right.
Like we all want safety. We all want that. It's just how you get there. We all want our students to achieve. We want our test scores to be higher. It's how you get there. So I think that's the dynamics and the discussions that are so important.
Has your relationship with like friends changed since becoming elected?
It has.
How?
In a weird way. I know we've talked about this, but I understand at school where it's a really big thing. It's a big thing being an elected official, but they treat you different. And I don't feel like I'm different.
My friends haven't started treating me different.
Some of my friends have been like, oh my God, I love having you as a friend. And it's like, I'm the same person 20 years ago. I just am on the school board. The way people treat you, like when you go on campus and things, it's like a really big deal. And I get it, but I still don't totally get it because I'm just there to help, to support, to do the things that I can, but it's like a really big deal. So it has been a little bit different. Not too much, but a little bit different, yes.
Yeah. I think it's a good sign, right? Because I mean, really, as an elected, you're really just a symbol for the collective interest of the community. So when that position is held in a light that is well received, it means that the people receiving that are open to the will of the community. I think it's really important. My friends don't treat me differently though. I'm still kind of stuck on that.
Brad's friends don't treat him differently. We're not different.
I call you Madam Clerk.
I know. You're really good with that lingo. I need to get better. I'm learning. I try to learn as much as I can. But I was saying, even I said doing this podcast, sometimes I say things I need to think about. So I'm learning.
All right. Tell me about that. Do you feel that as an elected, you can't be your honest self?
No, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do. It just depends on the situation. But sometimes, yeah, because you see in the media how they'll take clips and they'll change them. And that's not really what you meant to say. So I do find that that's a little bit difficult.
Yeah. And I think we both kind of like been through that a little bit as far as like taking things out of context, making it seem differently. I think it's really unfortunate, right? Because I think, so you and I ran, I mentioned it before, like pretty similar platforms of communication, transparency. And that's what, so before I was elected, I loved doing podcasts, and I did a lot of them. And it was always really hard for me to get electeds to sit down and just have a loose conversation like we're having now,
right?
Because of that element, that environment, and it's one that is based on fear, right? And it bothered me. Not like I didn't lose sleep, but it is perturbing. And I told myself when I get elected, I'm going to do my best to not do that. Because the only time people ever wanted to come on the podcast or have that conversation was during election season. Then once election season was over, they didn't want to have those conversations. Right. So I think it's cool that we're having even this conversation.
I do feel that it's important to stay yourself, though. The reason that we got elected was because that's who we were, our genuine, this is how we feel, this is our, concerns, so I do think that it is important, but there's definitely, it's a different feel
There's
once
a
you get elected.
responsibility attached to
exactly.
it, right? So like and that's where I've landed on it. I'm like, all right, it's not changing who you are. It's just being responsible with what you say, because it does matter, and you want people to, trust that you are who they elected. But it is a very interesting journey to like get to the place where you're not fearful of things being taken out of context, because you know your heart, you know your intention, you know who you are, and I'm gonna keep communicating and talking about things that are important.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was just in
easy.
Vegas, and one of my good friends, my teammate, she just got appointed, because in Henderson and Green Valley, you get appointed to police chief, and she's police chief. So of course I was giving her a bad time. I was like, I saw they raided a house for Tupac. Who killed Tupac? And she's like, I can't tell you. I'm like, I won't tell anybody. And she's like, I can't tell you. So just even that part where you can't be as open about some things that people don't understand. You have to stay true to the position. And I love that about her, because she wouldn't tell me anything. And she knows I probably would have told everybody. But, there's that part where you're open, but now you have to be a little bit more reserved, or you can't say things that you want to say. And so that part, it's not difficult, but it's just something that you deal with as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big learning thing that, even like Brown Act, like
Right.
even, there's even a subtle, feeling of like even us talking, it's like there's very with just most people don't know what the Brown Act is, and I do that all the time too, where I'll start talking about things that like I think everybody knows, and
Right.
but like even learning to work within a group in a collaborative way, but also making sure that you're being responsible and respecting like the democratic process, and making sure that it's completely ethical.
Right.
Like that's a thing that you have to learn to navigate, and some people don't do it very well, and some people are very on top of it. I think it's something that we do really well too.
Yeah.
But it's you have to learn it.
Right.
Like, and
I think I talk to you, pretty much only you, so that helps it. But it is difficult to navigate, because you understand the reasoning behind it. But then there's times where you feel so helpless, because you can't really talk about things. So it's like you're on your own, and you want to make the best decisions, and collaborating and getting other views are important, but you can't do that. So sometimes that makes it difficult.
yeah, and that's where I think it really is important to build a certain level of rapport with your colleagues, and learn to trust in, the optimal, situation. You trust your colleagues in a way to where you don't need to talk to them about these things. If they're, passionate about something and coming up with something, like that you're open to it, and you have those conversations in open session. But it can get difficult because you're not collaborating with them. So that's why I think it's really important to have a wider network of like people that you trust, that are familiar with education, that you can like have conversations with without building a consensus and breaking the Brown Act, right?
Right. I think that's why the CSBA conferences have been so helpful, because you really get to hear from other board members across the state that are dealing with some things more extreme than we are. Some things that are very similar to what we're dealing with. So I do like that collaboration piece and the conferences. That's been very helpful. I do wish that we had more of that before we came in.
Yeah.
Coming in December and voting on some of the things that we had to vote on was, I wish we had more training. I wish they would change that a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder if that's how it is like everywhere. And that's another thing, like when you're learning as an elect, because both you and I are first time electeds, you're constantly trying to figure out if this is normal. Like if you're like, oh, this is kind of a weird process. Like, is this normal and everyone's accepted this and there's a reason and I just got to acclimate? But honestly, I felt like pretty often, like when I reflect on those things, I'm like, no, that's just a bad process.
Right.
And really when people are first elected, like there needs to be more of an onboarding. There needs to be more education, because a lot of the mistakes people are going to make are going to be in the beginning. And I mean, just like, reorging and like it gets very difficult.
Right.
For
And you want to make
first-time
good
electeds.
decisions. You want to make sure that you're making decisions based on things, that the facts, and sometimes coming in, you don't totally understand it.
Yeah.
So being oversight and not understanding it, that's a problem. So that's again why I try to research, collaborate, even with you as much as I can, just to understand, because you want to make the best decisions you can. You're making decisions for children and families.
And I think that's like the power of questions is really important too, because a lot of times, again, like as oversight, as a board, we really have to build a relationship with the people that are, it's their full-time job. Like like being a board member is not a full-time job.
Right.
No one's making a salary off of this. So you really need people that are doing the hard work and be able to like ask them questions and trust that information,
Right.
and then have the follow through, and like that's where oversight comes in. I think that's something that I had to get over. Like I don't need to have the right answer or have the solutions. I have to have oversight and ask questions and dig in and make sure everything's on the up and up. And the role of a school board member, any governing board, I think it's really important to like have a clear idea of what it is you're there to do,
Right.
and not take it too lightly. It's very, very important. But also know that you are not like you're not going to solve every single problem by yourself. That's not how
Right.
it works. It's oversight, and it requires a lot of attention, a lot of time. People don't realize how much time.
It's
goes
a
into-
lot of time.
How much time do you think you spend on school board stuff on a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis?
Depends on the week, I know.
It does
but
depend on the
average.
week. I would say almost 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it's like 40 hours a month. And that's a huge misconception, is that we get paid so much.
Oh,
You must
yeah.
like make a lot of money being a school board member. No. It's
Yeah.
kind of like coaching. You do it because you love it and you want to make a difference. It's not about the paycheck or the money. You're not making all that money.
And it's like coaching. It's like there's what you're like paid to do, and then all the others
Correct.
to be a coach and to be a good coach are two very different things. Like
Right.
my wrestling coach, it was like the practices were long, and then you had tournaments on the weekend. You got to drive out to Monrovia. It's a whole day thing.
Right.
You think about all the time they spend away from their families, usually just for a small stipend, like what
Right.
a lot of electeds get.
I coached travel ball for about 15 years, and you don't
seems
get
like a lot of
paid.
work.
You don't take a paycheck. Well, I didn't back then. Some people do now, but it was an age where I had college recruiting. So I had colleges and coaches calling me all the time, and people are like, why don't you do it anymore? It was just so time consuming. Softball, you can play 3 to 5 games in a day. So you talk about doing that on a Saturday, Sunday, the drives back and forth, it became overwhelming. I love it. I miss it. But it's a lot of work for not much pay.
Yeah. You really have to be in it, and you have to love it.
Yeah.
And if you don't love it, you won't do it for very long.
Absolutely.
What do you hope for our district? Like, what do you see in the future? Like, what is it that you are fighting for and working for in our district?
I think I just want people to want to come to our district, to want to have their children in our district, because we have such great things in place. We've talked about, transparency, what I think is improving our communication. I want to have programs. I want to have things that are different than others. A lot of people are getting taken from our district to the others, but some of their programs are pretty amazing and different than what we have. So we need to find a place where we can get our local kids to stay with us. And I think that's, all of your programs, your sports, your things like that. So I just want people to be proud to be in our district. I want people to believe that we're listening to them, that we're doing the right things for kids and families. And I want them to want to come to our district and stay in our district. And I do think we're on the right path.
I totally agree. And I think that there's a lot of things that have been like put in place in the work that's being done to where I'm already starting to see it. Like
Absolutely.
even in like the one-on-one conversations I've had. I had one conversation just a couple days ago with somebody who their child they're on permit outside of our district, and I was talking to her about coming back. I mean, the school's right across the street. I mean, But hearing like her considerations of like why they chose to go out of their way to go out of our district, it kind of sucks, right?
Right.
Because every parent just wants what's best for their kid, and that's all there is to it. But when our district is what's best for their kids, it's a great alignment of community interest and district interest. But I think that's going to start happening. I think people are going to start seeing it. I think
hope
that,
so.
there's a lot of people that work on it. But I think in general, from the direction of the board, really focusing on that communication and community engagement, people are going to start really taking notice of the district.
Right. Because if you think about it, it's much easier to have your kids local where you live.
100%.
So to take them out, that must mean that they don't have a lot of confidence in us, and we need to change that.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is just listening to them, and when they feel that they're being heard, you're not going to give everybody what they want. You can't change everything, but to make some positive changes, to at least listen to them and take into consideration, their concerns, their feelings, their positives, negatives. I think that's important. So I do think that the collaboration is better now from what I've seen, and it should continue to, improve.
I feel very optimistic about it.
Me too.
And I'm not just saying that because the camera's on.
Right.
I really do feel.
No, I do too.
What is it that you want to do, from a school board perspective? That is there anything you would want to do like on campus, like with students? Like what do you want to do more of as a school board member? I mean, apart from like wanting to dig into more data and all that stuff, like what do you feel like you could do more of as a school board member?
I just think working in partnership with them.
That was a long question. I need to get that out.
Working in partnership with them, listening, like students have a lot to say. And I think that some of the advisory things, the committees that we're doing, I think are really important. And they have to understand that, just because they're a student, you don't get everything you want. We've all heard, oh, if I was president of the, I'd have no recess, or I'd have no homework, or, there's things that kids want that you're like, that's not going to happen. But at least some of the things that you can change, whether that be food or things like that, or just educating them so they understand. I think working with just the students and partnering with the families, I think that's just huge. And I want to keep doing that. I don't really think, you hear a lot of people talk about legacy or things like that. I don't really think like that. I really just want to do the best job I can. When I can, and hopefully there's good results. But like you said, I'm only one person. It takes 3 people on a board. So I just want to try to do the best that I can, and I think that's just being a good listener and trying to implement the things that we can do, and trying to explain the things that we cannot do, so that people understand.
Well, the good thing is, I think that when you follow that philosophy, that is how you leave a legacy. Usually people that are just trying to leave a legacy don't. But when you just do the work and you focus on those principles,
right,
that's how that happens.
I'm just excited to be on school board.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's so exciting in itself to be able to make a difference. So I don't really think about those things. It's kind of like when you're playing, I played in college. You don't think about those. You're just playing. You're having fun with your friends. And then the accolades of my team and my teammates later on, you're like, wow, this was a big deal. But you don't, I kind of treat this the same way. Yeah. You do the best that you can. And, sometimes it's overwhelming. So you just try to stay up week to week and do the best that you can.
Yeah. It can be a lot of work sometimes, but you, what I love about you, and I feel like we're in lockstep with this, is like when we first got on school board, it was like, we want to do everything.
Right.
Like we're at every event, we're at every, like, okay, what are we doing today? And even though it's like, it's not a full-time job.
Right.
We both have full-time jobs, but you want to just keep going. And I feel like you've kept that energy, and I feel like I have, but it does, like, sometimes like when there's not as much to do, there's no events, there's less conversations happening, people are on vacation, you're like, okay, what can we do? And I think that's a positive sign.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I still want to do everything.
Yeah,
things
me
are
too.
still slow for me. I'm very impatient sometimes with things, but Yeah, you just start to learn, okay, this is a one step process. We have to handle one thing at a time. And so it's a learning curve. But every month, I feel like I know more. You know,
Yeah.
when we first got sworn in December, I felt lost.
Yeah.
And every month, I feel like, okay, and I'm still not, 100% on it, but every month gets better.
Yeah.
I learn more. And I feel like in a year from now, in 2 years from now, in 4 years from now, I just think I'm going to be in such a better place.
What is one piece of advice, like your go-to piece of advice for young people, for students, older students, high school students?
I just think embrace the experience and do everything that you can do. There's so many cool clubs. There's so many cool classes, the extracurricular, the things. I think be involved and stay involved and, just do the best that you can do. I think the more involved, the more collaboration, the more, just different things you have in life, the better, being multidimensional. I used to even say with my softball players, don't play one position, play all of them, because when you go to college, they're going to want you to play different positions and you want to be ready. So I think just have as many experiences as you can and, take those experiences into life and beyond. Because sometimes you don't. In high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to play sports, but I wouldn't have guessed the things that I'm doing now I would have been doing. So I just think take all of the experiences in and use them to your benefit in life. There's so many cool things. I mean, all of the robotics. My dad and I were talking about the robotics last night. The AI, there's so many cool things. Just, do as much as you can and use those experiences in life.
I totally agree. I actually have to be careful with that because I have so many interests that I end up getting so wrapped up. But I think that that's the best thing. Like, I feel like as adults, or maybe just how adults were when I was younger, but it was always like you had to figure it out so quick. And this is one thing I've said before is don't follow your dreams, follow your interest, and your dreams will come true.
Yeah.
Follow the things that you're interested in, because if you're interested in something and it becomes a passion and you become resourceful and you're able to make a living doing the thing that you love, that's where happiness comes from.
Right.
But so many times we push people in direction where hey, this is this career makes X amount of dollars. We need you to go do that. And, for some people it aligns, but vast majority, it's you need to guide people to what they're going to do good at and embrace and have fulfillment in their life.
Right.
And I feel like we have a lot of things happening with the new STEAM building. I feel like, with Cal Apps, I love being on the Cal Apps board. There's so many awesome things happening. And if, I want all the students to know about them.
Right.
Because there are so many there's the drone class. I visited that one a couple of times. The firefighters. There's a whole bunch of really cool things. The automotive, the culinary, all these things, and then the new building.
Yes.
There's so many cool technology-based things that are happening. The robotics in there are really impressive. I feel like it's going to inspire so many kids to really be competitive after high school.
Right. There's just so many things that we didn't have. Well, you're younger than me,
typing.
but I definitely did. I had typing too.
Typing.
Right.
Yeah.
I talked to my daughter. I'm like, did they have this class? The forensic science class.
Yeah.
I just love that. There's
Dude,
so many things I would have
it.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, we were there together.
Yes.
They were so into that.
I was into
Yeah.
it. It was so cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to take that class, and we didn't have opportunities like that. It was so basic. I do think kids grow up a lot faster than we did, but they have so many cool opportunities that I don't think we had, right? True. I'm talking about for myself too, not to say. He needs to work on it too.
I knew, but it works both ways.
Right.
But I mean, you're right. As students knowing about it and then having the tools to do it, I think that is what success looks like to me. Is our students finding something they're passionate about and being successful outside. And that's why I honestly feel that not school board as an elected role, but the apparatus, the utility of a school district, that is what builds your community, not just now, but 10 years, 15, 20 years. Because if they have a great, safe, and educational experience, then they're going to be able to make a good living. They're going to afford a house in your community. They're going to want to come back to your community because that's where their positive memories were. And you don't see them fleeing and going other places. like we have to be forward looking as a school district now of like, this isn't just about right now, this is about the future of the community.
Right.
And I mean that, like, it's a big deal. It's like, it's the most important thing we can do is grow our children into the people that we want them to become, and make it in a way to where this is the place that they attach those positive memories to and want to stay here.
Right. And they have to be happy. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, my mom, myself, my daughter, we all went to college. My dad didn't. He's had an amazing life. He's made way much more money than we have. And he enjoyed it. You know, so there's a different path for everybody. Not everyone is college bound. Not everyone wants to do, you know, the physical work that my father did. But everyone needs to find what they're good at and what makes them happy. So I just agree 100% on that. And all of these different avenues, they really do open it up for kids to find things that really they enjoy doing.
And I mean, so I was not a studious student. Eric can...
I told my daughter I was, but I wasn't super studious.
I was like the class clown. Like I was seeking approval, still am. Athletics helped me. So my mom passed when I was 16, and I was completely like lost, just like numb. But being on a wrestling team helped me in a way find some purpose and structure and discipline and just a place where I can be safe.
Right.
And I feel like I lean on those experiences, even though I wasn't the most studious student. I feel like there's certain things that go beyond grades, to where if you want your students to feel safe and you want them to, we talk about mental health all the time.
Right.
The mental health conversation isn't just about this program or that, but it's about the culture of your schools and having people there that care about their students. You know, my wrestling coach, like, he knew what was going on with me. I think they delivered meals to my house like the following days, and that to me was mental health services.
Right.
Is just going to the wrestling room and knowing that people knew what was going on and it wasn't weird. Like having students that are safe, happy, that is like focusing on mental health. And that's what we always talk about, focusing on mental health for students. And I think that it's a much broader conversation, but it's the most important conversation because it attaches to all of the other outcomes that we talk about.
Right. And you have a network of close people. Like, I just went to Vegas and I saw about 10 of my teammates, and man, they're doing amazing things. Everyone's so happy in life. And I know, and they know that if I called upon them or they called on me, we're there for each other. So having that like-minded drive for success, you know, with the people around you, I think is really important. Just the different diversity that you see within sports and your teammates. I don't know. I think sports to me are everything. Yeah,
That's why, you know, it's just supporting like sports programs isn't just, you know, supporting because you want to have a winning team. Like, that is investing in mental health for your student body. And it's also building a positive campus culture. It's building it attaches to everything. Even there's a benefit for it, even for students that are not on the team.
Right.
Because when you have a positive campus culture and you have athletes that are leaders on campus, you have the other student body going to the games. They feel pride in their school.
Yes.
They feel like there's a whole collective, just positive culture that comes with that. So, I mean,
and
all
it's
those things are
positive
attached.
distractions too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would tell one of my kids that I coached, when you're on the field, you don't really think about all those things. Yeah, when you walk off the field, you start to think about, you know, your boyfriends or your parents or things like that. But being on the field or on the wrestling mat or, you know, anywhere, it's a good distraction. It takes your mind off of real life for just a few hours. My mom, my sophomore year in college, she developed cancer. She had breast cancer. And I went home and I was like, you know, I'm an only child. I'm going home to be with my family. And after a few days, she sent me back. She's like, you're not doing anything here. Go back. Go be with your teammates. Go practice. Go do those things because they're going to distract you. And she was right. You know, even for just a few hours, it takes your mind off of the negative things that you're dealing with outside. So I think that's a really important piece for, you know, athletes as well.
Yeah, and sometimes that distraction actually, it re-energizes and helps you be think more clearly and handle those emotions, more effectively when you do switch gears back to thinking about it.
Right.
I mean, it's just so important. I mean, it speaks to like the general idea of like having a healthy student body.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into that, right? There's like, school lunches. There's, what we're feeding our students. The level of, exercise that we give them, but also just being healthy isn't just like one thing. If they're fed and they are getting exercise and they're getting education, their grades are going to do better. Their grades do better. They're going to have more opportunity. If they have more opportunity, you're going to have just a better community in general. Like
Right.
it all ties together. But it's funny because sometimes, I mean, we're talking about this in like, abstract ways. But then you zoom back into being a school board member and you're looking at, agenda item 10.3 blah, blah, blah. And you're like talking about this one very specific thing. And all of those collective decisions is what creates the possibility for those positive campus cultures
Right.
to occur. But it's easy to forget that sometimes when you're just talking about that one item. I think that's something that you and I won't speak for you, but like I feel like we keep the weight of like that one decision is a really big deal. And sometimes we can be very passionate about like even just one thing, and it's because we kind of see it holistically as like every one of these decisions is a big deal, and sometimes convincing everybody to take it that seriously can be difficult.
Right.
But I think that's something that we kind of both do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very passionate. Sometimes it can be, aggression, but it's really not. I just really feel strongly about the things that I feel strongly about, and one of those is kids and education. So when you're making those decisions and you're thinking about it, I do become a little bit passionate at times.
Yeah.
But
We've only
I would rather be that way than just...
You and I are going to have it out on the board so many more times.
No, well, I don't know.
We probably will. I'm getting better, though. I'm getting better.
No, it is fun. I like having fun too. My dad always taught me that too, is you have to have fun, but be focused when you need to be. But I do like having fun as well.
Yeah. Well, like, one thing for me on the board that I've had to, really look inside and like, it goes to our conversation earlier about, being yourself, but also being responsible in a way to where like your role now doesn't supersede yourself, but you have to attach it and make it work. One thing for me being on the board, like I like when things get tense, I'll like use humor to lighten the mood. Now, sometimes that's okay. But when you're in open session and you don't know where everyone's at, you have to really weigh that out.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying I'm never going to do it again, but I think that every time like I'm in the situation where I have to make that decision, and I'm constantly recalibrating, and I feel like that's probably a good sign. Is just like you're able to adjust and do better, and I think that's something that is going to be an ongoing thing, and I think everybody does it in their own way.
I think we're going to grow as people because of things like this, though. Like my body language is not the best sometimes, so sometimes I'm really happy that they're not on us all the time, that they pan away.
Then there's me who wants it on me all the time.
Yeah, so I have to, and I'm doing better, but I'm not 100% at all. Like I react.
Self-awareness as an elected, like you have to be on. So there was a meeting where I was like getting ready to go on vacation the next day, and I watched the board meeting. And I'm like, dude, my body language is like, I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
And like, cause I was I was relaxed, and it's just like it's just like being self-aware and noticing, okay, the wide camera is picking me up, but it's also, and I noticed this, like, all right, so I have like a stiff neck, right? And I'm on the side. So like turning my head to like look at everybody is kind of difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
So I end up doing this, and then I'm here and I'm like, oh, this isn't very comfortable. So I kind of slide down a little bit, and then the chairs lean back pretty far.
Right.
So then I'm like, okay, I'll lean back a little bit. Then I'm like, oh, I'll cross my legs. And then like, 2 minutes later, you look at the camera, it looks like I'm like lounging.
Right.
And it just, but being self-aware, that's hard because you don't want to put off the wrong signals to the public.
Right.
Like I know I take the role very seriously and doing the work, and so do you. But as a public official, you're always keeping in check, like what am I communicating when I'm not even trying to communicate? And that's really important. And I feel like some electeds do it really well. I feel like I'm getting better, but I think that's the only thing you can do is try to get better.
It's hard because, like, I know you, other people know you, but someone just watching that doesn't know us,
Like,
they
dude,
don't
that guy
know.
is relaxed.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, that can be a difficult thing. But it
Yeah.
is, I watch every board meeting at least twice afterwards, which people think that's crazy. But
So
I
crazy.
do want to remember the conversations the more you hear it. So I like to take notes. And I do want to look at myself and how I portray myself because I know who I am. I'm confident with who I am, and, you know, you as well. But other people don't know us. So I just want to
Right.
make sure that I'm giving off a positive, you know, vibe or energy to them.
Do you feel like your skin has gotten thicker being an elected?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, we came in very early with some things that we had to deal with, and I felt those were not representative of who I was.
Right.
So that part bothers me. I care way too much about what other people think. That's one of my downfalls for sure. So I'm learning, but I do still care what people think. You know, you
Sure.
want to do a good job. You want to.
There's a healthy amount.
Yeah. So but I do think it has changed me a little bit. I don't know. Being in sports as well, you know, I used to joke when I played softball. I, you know, played Division I softball. I would get up in the morning and I would read the newspaper, and me, kind of like a quarterback, me being the pitcher, did I lose the game for us or did I win the game for us? It was always, so you kind of dealt with that your whole life, but this is different because, you know, that, I mean, it impacted my team, but really it was about me. This is about our community and about our kids. So I look at it a little bit different, and I do care about what people think, but it is helping. I do think I'm becoming a little bit stronger in that area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's like being forged in the fire, right? I feel like I feel like because of how all right. So how you run a campaign to get elected, I think really sets the stage for the line you need to walk once you're elected. And I feel like we both ran on like, hey, we're real people. What you see is what you get. These are my priorities. These are my values. This is who I am. Let's do this.
Right.
And people rallied. Like, you ran an awesome campaign.
Thank you. I didn't run it how people told me to, though. That's for sure. I did things very different. I was pretty much on it. Like, of course, you're supposed to be my enemy. You're running against Brad. You can't be friends with Brad. Why? I like Brad.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't
People
think
told me
about
that
it
same
politically.
thing.
Yeah.
And I probably felt very similar to you. Like, I'm like, that's not the way I roll.
And maybe, no, that even if there was one position available, I don't think it would have changed my mind. But I did things differently than people told me.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, for the first time you and I talked when we were campaigning, I was like, okay, like she would, and I would tell people like even before you and I like really like talked and collaborated, like when we were campaigning, I'd tell people like, I think she'd be a great board member.
And vice
Like,
versa.
I want you to vote for me, but she'd be a great board member as well.
Right. And I found myself saying, you know, these are the people that I would vote for, you know, when
Yeah.
you're not supposed to do that. You're only supposed to vote for yourself or tell.
Yeah.
And maybe some of my family did only vote for me, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, you know, it's, I don't know. I always joke with you, I'm not a politician. Like, I just love the things that I love, but I just don't think it has to be ugly. I think your merits are your merits, my merits, and we bring different things to the board. All of our board members bring different things to the board. So I just don't think it has to be so ugly all the time.
It really doesn't. And it drives me crazy. And we're going into an election cycle soon. And I'm so glad we're not running.
I know, me too.
But I'm already starting to see it. And it's unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
And if you're outside of politics, you probably have no idea what we're talking about.
Right.
Because a lot of it's like, it's basically like high school with stakes, right? It's and it really doesn't have to be that way. And I know you say like you're not a politician, but I hate to be the one.
Apparently
to
I
break it to you.
am.
Yeah, you
Everyone's
are.
telling
You
me
are.
I know.
But I think the term politician has gotten a bad rap.
Yes.
And probably reasonably so. But being a politician, being in politics, when people, all it is everybody in the community has views and opinions.
Right.
Some are more engaged, some are less, but everybody has values. And you being the representative, they just trust that your values are aligned, or at least more so in a way to where hey, I don't need to be at every meeting. I don't need to spend my entire time doing this because the person on the board is going to ask the questions and get to a point where their conclusion or their decision is probably going to be reflective of my same values.
Right.
So you take that on, and it's a badge and it's a responsibility, but that is what politics is. And then in school board, I believe, is the most important, or at least the most direct. But then it carries over into all the other electeds. And then the further you get, and I know really good elected politicians that have gone from local representation to state and federal, and they all say the same thing. It's similar in some ways, but they're further away from the constituents.
Right.
So it's much more difficult because you need to be in the community to reflect the values of that community. I think that's where Washington kind of, a lot of the bad, like the politician being a bad thing, is sometimes you feel like the person way over there isn't reflective of your values, so you don't have anybody championing how you feel about the situation.
Right.
And I feel like that's where being in the community is really important. And we're lucky, at least locally, to have politicians that will actually come back to their community and spend the time and have those meetings and engage with the community to bring those views to Sacramento or Washington. But it's not as common as, it really should be.
And everyone that I've met so far on this journey has been amazing. I can't think of one politician that I've met that I haven't, really enjoyed talking to. Now, maybe I'm new. I'm only 6 months in, but I can honestly say that the people I've met really do genuinely care. Like, this job is something that you're not going to do if you don't care about, the community and what you're doing. So,
and that's the thing, and that goes back to the point of, like, when you're running, when you're doing all the work of running a campaign, you're like, dude, no one's doing this unless their heart's in it.
Right.
Like, I believe in general, most people are good people. I have a very optimistic view of the world, even though I can be pretty cynical sometimes.
No, I agree with you.
Like, I believe most people want the same things. There's only a very, very small fraction of people that are just like in their own little thing. But people all want the same things, and they have different perspectives, and it leads into different problem solving avenues, but we all want to kind of get to the same point. And most people are good. And if you're running for office, I mean, with all the work that comes along with it, you're probably a pretty stand-up person, and you're doing good. And I always approach everything with that in mind, like, assume the best in people, and give people grace to be human and mess up, and don't assume. Like, I do my very best to not assume what someone's thinking or what somebody is feeling. And that's why I ask a lot of questions. And sometimes, like, you have to be vulnerable in a way to just, like, ask people the question that you might even feel like you know the answer to. But everybody in this space, generally speaking, is collaborative and supportive. It's only during election time do you see these invisible lines, and you see people, I wish endorsements were off the table.
Me too.
Nobody's
That's the hardest part
anybody.
about campaigning. That was the part I hated the most, to be honest.
Yeah, it makes it makes governing after the election, it creates a barrier, right? Because no matter, when elections come, you endorse, all these people, you have to be able to break through the fact that maybe you endorse somebody who's not there, or, but you still got to do your job. And this has been my thing to anybody in the area, like, going into the season, is my main and only priority is the school board. Right. And making sure I can do my job effectively in my role as a school board member, and and I'm a big proponent of this in all areas of life, of not adopting other people's relationships as your own. Right. So, the whole, like, friend of your enemy is your friend, and all that has to stay away. Right. Because at the end of the day, it's this is what this is my intention. This is what I'm up to.
I think that's what frustrated me the most was I didn't expect people to endorse me or not endorse me. I expected people to have conversations with me about my views, and that didn't happen in a lot of places. And I think that was disappointing to me. I also think people that, are considering running and, doing it, don't listen, just do it if that's what you're. I can't tell you how many times I was told I'll never win. Nobody knows who you are. You'll never win. You can't beat incumbents. You can't do any of that. And there were a few people that were like, yes, you can. I did it. Yes, you can. And that just kept driving me to keep going and doing the things. And at the end of the day, just not worrying about all the variables outside and worrying about what I did. And I did things differently, and people told me not to do things. I would do some lit drops rather than knocking on doors, which people are like, you have to knock on doors all the time. I didn't follow some directions, but there were some days where you could do it and some days where you're just like, I can't do this, and there is a lot of sacrifice.
It's hard.
It was football season and I love football. So every Sunday walking, that was difficult sometimes, but at the end of the day, you have to put out the, work that you want to put into the board. And that was the work that I had to put in, but it's so worth it, but I think just don't get looped in if people want to run, which I hope there'll be some good people running, that you don't get looped into what everybody, you have your mentors and people that, yes, you can count on, but not every single candidate is the same. And, stay true to yourself.
I hope I never become the discouraging Democratic participation is a bad thing.
Right.
You should want as many people in the field as possible, even if you even if you have your person, you're like, I support this person. The more competition or the more voices in, the better if your person is the best person, then it'll be more obvious.
Right.
But there always is that element that wants to like discourage people from running. And I've had, personal interactions with like that. And I'm glad that I jumped in. And honestly, like people said, there's no way you're going to win. When I ran the first time, just turns out they were right. But that was like, for me in my path, that was the best thing that could have happened.
Right.
Because all of the work that went into it, and to lose the first time I ran was, is cathartic the right word, Eric? Cathartic. It was a moment for me to really go, wow. Like, it was humbling, but it was also, there was like all these feelings,
right?
Like a little embarrassment. There was like the feeling of failing and like letting people down.
That's a hard one too. That was my biggest thing, is not letting people down. People are donating, people are supporting you, they're walking with you. And that was the only thing that would have bothered me if I would have lost, was, man, a lot of these people really wanted me to win. They thought I was the best choice. Yes. But the competition was good. There were days I would look at your Instagram and you're out walking and I'm like, oh gosh, Brad's out walking. I better get out and go. Well, so that competition is very healthy and good.
And that was the shift. Like the first time, I mean, it was like pandemic, but I was so focused on the social media stuff and just like doing what, like I was comfortable just like making graphics and posting stuff. And then I realized like I mean, it was a pandemic, but I wasn't making the one-on-one contact with the community, and that's what I need to be doing. So the second time, that's what I focused all my energy on. But having that 2 years to really think like, am I going to do this all again, knowing how it felt to lose?
Right.
Like, am I going to risk the feelings that come along with it, and is it worth it? And having to go to that place and make that like that very clear decision of, yes, the pain and the effort and the resources, it's worth it.
Right. I knew you'd win, by the way.
Oh,
I told him all the time he would win.
You did, but that was almost scary, because the first time I ran, there were people saying, "There's no way you don't," and it was almost like I was like traumatized. So whenever I'd hear it the second time, I'm like, "Uh-oh, it's an omen."
And that's hard. I had people, okay, well, we run again in 2 years when you don't win this time. And I was like, I just give him the look like, no, I want to win this time. I don't want to
Yeah.
do this again and have to worry about that. I will run in 4 years, so I'm going to do it again at some point,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to wait another 2 years.
Yeah.
So I'm glad,
it was a
knock on
long
wood, I'm
2
glad it
years.
worked out for me.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you are on the board. I'm very, I feel very privileged to be your colleague.
And vice versa.
And I feel like we have a lot of really awesome things that are going to happen with the district. And I feel like you and I both, we're going to have like a lot of growth in this space. And I'm really excited to see things develop for all of us on the board and all of us in the district. I think it's going to be a really fun and productive ride.
I do too. I just hope everyone is patient because like we're saying, I was very impatient and now I'm learning that you have to be more patient and just, wait. I think things are going to be coming more quickly now. I think now that we have new administration in place. So I hope that everyone tries to be involved and understand. That's one thing that frustrates me is you have people that are very critical, but they're not involved. You have to be involved. You have to watch the board meetings. You have to, be involved with your community. So I hope people, as they see that we're listening, I hope that they will become more involved.
And then from there, I hope that really, I feel like if there's a lot of trust in the district, people feel less compelled to be involved because you typically see more involvement when people are upset or they're angry or they distrust. Right. And I think that although I'm not saying I want people to be involved, but I also see there's a silver lining when people think that we're on the right path and they feel like, you know what, I'm gonna stay home and focus on my kids and the things that are important to me because we're on a good ride.
Right.
And
I've heard that. I'm sure you've heard that too. Oh, I just feel more,
Yeah.
You're on the board, so I just feel, and it's like, okay, but you still have to be involved. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But, I still want people to be involved because, again, as board members, we're not there every day. We're not on those campuses every day seeing everything that's happening. So we do depend on people and the voices of our community to let us know what's happening. So I do hope that they stay involved.
I do want to spend more time on campuses, though.
Me too.
I think you and I talked about that back then. I think you've done it more than me. But
I have about 5 campuses I still need to get to.
Isn't that crazy? I thought I was going to be on every campus like the first month.
Right. It's hard. Well, and it's hard with me teaching because it's hard for me to get out and go. But
it's hard for me at the college too. I mean, any elected that has a full-time job, it's going to be difficult. But I think that's something that we could both probably do more of, and just like being intentional and like because you have to have boots on the ground to really know
absolutely
what's going on.
Yes. And I've been to some places more than once, many times, and I've been to some events, but I mean like really get on, talk to their administrators, talk and really get a feel for, what our concerns are and what we need.
I mean, you and I have done it a couple times and I feel like it's so beneficial.
Yes.
Like the last time we went to a campus and talked to the administration, I felt like it paints such a better picture and you see where you can be more supportive in those conversations. They're so invaluable.
Right. And my go-to question is if you had a wish list, what would it be? Because we can't give you everything, but what exactly would you want? And a principal of mine did that, 1 year with our staff. Okay, you've been here at your school for many years. If you had a wish list, what would it be? And we didn't get everything, but we did have some changes because of that. So an administrator that's open enough to listen to you and take into consideration how you feel, I think that's very important.
I think we're getting there too. I'm really, I'm very optimistic about the district, but also with Dr. Dradi. I feel like,
yes.
Again, like, oversight is a tricky thing, but I think that we are in a much better place now, and things are happening.
I feel like one of my best traits is judging people character-wise and things like that. And I do believe that Dr. Dradi is genuine. He cares about kids. He cares about people. I think he has a lot of love to give, and that's important with me. Character is really important to me. So I do think that we're in the right direction with him.
Mm-hmm. So do I. And I think in the next year, because people forget, like he's really new. He's just as new as we are.
Right.
You know, now that, you know, the first year is under our belt, you know, plans have been made and things are going forward. Like there's going to be a lot more to show for a lot of the work. And I think that that's going to really energize the district as a whole. And there's always going to be problems.
Right.
And we're going to deal with them. But at the end of the day, I feel like we're open to problems. And we are not there's not a defensive nature in us. It's, yes, there's going to be problems. Let's figure them out.
Right.
And let's work towards our mutual solution.
And I think that we are definitely solution based, which is important too. We're always asking questions of what we can do, what changes we can make, what can we do to make things better. And I think that's really all people want. I don't think they're expecting, you know, us to move mountains when we can't, but I do think that they expect us to try to solve the problems and come up with solutions. So that's really important.
Mm-hmm. I think there's like a couple of phases, right, in school. There's a big phase of you're constantly told what you can't do in your specific role, right? And then you learn about the different levels of governance and the, you know, the federal oversight, the state education board, the county supervisors. You learn about, you know, all of the, you know, ed code, you know, if it's not an ed code, you can't. So you learn like where your hands are tied.
Right. And the limitations, like we've talked about food, that was such a big thing.
Right.
Well, do people really realize what we're allowed to put in that food and why it tastes that way? I bet you they don't.
Right.
Because even I was surprised at some of the things. So that I think is where we educate people. So they're not just complaining. They have an understanding of why it is the way it is and what can we do to change it or not change it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is, you know, through the state.
But I think that that's a good part about having electeds that understand the value of their position, but also understand the value of having relationships, you know, lateral to us and above us, like throughout the state, to where when change really is necessary, I don't think either of us have a defeatist mentality. It's like, well, we can't do anything, so it's not important.
Right.
If it's important, it's important, even if we can't fix it right now. Sometimes things, you know, okay, this is going to take a while, and we're going to have those conversations and make sure we have those relationships to make necessary changes that are going to best suit our community. But there's some things that can happen quickly, and there's some things, a lot of things, that take a long time. But then, so there's the phase where you learn like all the stuff, like, okay, this is really out of your jurisdiction, your purview of a board member. But then you get to a point where like, okay, but now I understand the things that are.
Right.
So now when these conversations come up, you understand, no, this is within like what we can do.
The realms of, yes, absolutely.
And so you understand like where your authority starts and stops, and how to respect the authorities on the other side of those boundaries, to be able to do it effectively. And I think that's a really important process to get to, and I feel like we're there.
Yeah, and continuing to learn. That's why I just think the more we learn, the better. I don't totally understand all of my power of, you know, how to do things, but I'm learning. So that's important. And I just think being willing to learn and continue to learn and learn and learn, I feel like, you know, by the end of my term in 4 years, I'm going to be in a whole different place. And that's important. You know, you need to take that on and learn.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the power of like being humble in a way of like knowing how little you know, but also the value in just even what you do know, that it's legit and it's solid and it's powerful.
Right.
Like that's like it's a good place to be. And I think that's what people want.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
No, actually this was kind of fun, Eric.
Right. Thanks, Eric.
I was really nervous about this.
Yeah, you did fine though.
It's like when you start talking about things that you're passionate about, really it isn't difficult, you know, and there's a few certain subjects that I could talk about, and this is one of them, you know.
This is tricky. And honestly, like there's times like even in this conversation where like I have to like slow down my question to make sure I'm, you know, saying the right things. But at the heart of it, it's conversation, and this is what we're up to, and this is why we do the things we do. And I think it's awesome. I think it's important.
Absolutely.
And that's why I like long form conversations too. I know some people always say like, oh, you know, that'd be great if it was 5 minutes long. It's like, well, you know what? I do this, to be honest, I do it for me because I think it's like therapeutic and I think it's important. And sometimes you don't get to like really like that, like the essence of a conversation until you get there.
Right. And clips are hard because you don't really get to understand someone. So these conversations, I think, are important. And they kind of show people, you know, who we are.
Yeah.
We're just normal people.
Yeah. Just normal. Just
yeah.
really awesome, normal people. Too far. We'll cut that part out. I said I wasn't going to edit this.
Don't cut that part out. That shows who he is.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And I just want to say this on record because Brad has promised me that I will get to interview someone at some point, and I really would like to do that one day.
Okay, let me set this up because I might clip it because I did say that.
Yes. Well, you think about it, but I want my opportunity.
No, I've already thought about it. So one thing we've talked about on the Brick by Brick podcast was to have our guest now become the host. And the reason I like that concept is because it's like the whole idea behind Brick by Brick was like building the community brick by brick, and every brick is important. And, you know, and it really isn't about me. It's about having these conversations. And sometimes like you're going to have a conversation differently than I would.
Right.
And I love the idea of facilitating that and curating more than creating. So you're going to pick a guest for the next podcast.
Okay.
Do you have somebody in mind?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. Well, first I didn't know if you would actually let me do it, but now it sounds like you're doubling down and saying yes.
Oh, yeah,
so no, but I'll have to think about that and have a conversation with you.
Okay. All right. Well, stay tuned. Thank you all for watching. Amy, awesome as always.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's been awesome. Eric, I give you a C+. A+, buddy. Especially on the makeup.
A+ on the makeup.
I don't, honestly, you know what'd be funny is if when I watch this later, it's like just like smeared blush on my forehead the whole time I didn't even know.
Ooh, that would have been a good one. We should have done that.
Sweet. All right, we do. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time for the Brick by Brick podcast.
Yeah, let's see, what, an hour? Did we really go an hour? Wow, that went fast.